Consequently, the Malawi delegation was pleased that this was adopted as a strategic goal and thematic priority area of work in the entity's 2011 to 2013 strategic plan. It has also been incorporated into the 2014 to 2017 strategic plan. We see from the figures and the report of the Executive Director, the placement of the goal has led to the advancement of women's leadership as well as participation in peace and security. This is both in terms of support to development of global and national norms and policy. Malawi takes note with concern some of the challenges that the evaluation has pointed out for the entity in this mandate. I will speak to two of them, namely finance and the disconnect between global policy and normative priorities and communication gaps. In the area of insufficient financial resources, my delegation wishes to point out that UN Women should be creative in its resource mobilization, finding new avenues of fundraising, as well as increasing the funding base. As the theme incorporates sub-themes as responses to humanitarian needs that are not always known beforehand, it is therefore not always possible to have a ready reserve of resources for such unexpected activities. Needless to say, one has to prepare for that unexpected day. Madam President, on the points made about inadequate corporate knowledge management systems and communication gaps between headquarters and country offices, UN Women must address these urgently. As the evaluation points out, these challenges pose an obstacle to improving coherence between policy and programs that drive the work of the entity. We therefore urge UN Women to be diligent in working on this area, especially through, among others, the regional architecture frameworks of the entity. We, however, do commend UN Women that it is in agreement to the 5 recommendations that have been made in the evaluation. The evaluation is a valuable guidance to its work and mandate, and my delegation is pleased that UN Women is committed to ensuring gender issues are addressed in humanitarian response. This is in line with the priority in the new strategic plan. Madam President, in conclusion, permit me to comment on the reporting mechanism of UN Women. Malawi wishes to inform this board that it concurs with others that have spoken before me that UN Women should consolidate and streamline its reporting on annual reporting on the implementation of the strategic plan with the operational activities into one annual report, starting at the annual session in June 2014. I thank you for your attention.
Okay.
I thank the distinguished representative of Malawi for a statement.
Okay. Okay.
Distinguished delegates, we still have 3 speakers on our list, and I would ask again for brevity, because we still haven't discussed our afternoon session. So I would request brevity, please. I now call on the distinguished representative of Iran to give a statement. Madam, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to make intervention rather than statement, and I will be brief. I want to congratulate you, a member of the Bureau, Executive Board, and also I would like to appreciate the work of UN Women and statement made by distinguished Executive Director this morning. I wanted to raise, as an observer space for this session, a few points, and I would like to share with you. First of all, Iran attaches great importance to the work of UN Women. On this basis, we continue to believe that finding new ways to increase its core budget through a regular budget of the United Nations is necessary and shall contribute to the effectiveness, impartiality, and independence of the work of the UN. Secondly, we listened carefully this morning to the evaluation thematic report of UN Women on peace, security, and humanitarian response. However, we encourage UN Women to extend its evaluation or this kind of evaluation to other parts of its work and strategic goals, especially economic empowerment of women and sustainable development in line with post-2015 agenda process, which is going on within other UN Women sister agencies and coordinators. And finally, as mentioned this morning by one delegation, and I remember it was Distinguished Ambassador of Solomon Islands, it is important that UN Women avoid politicization of its work and function and continue to its thematic work and not go into country-specific situations without consent of country concerned. The principle of national ownership should be respected fully by UN Women.
I will.
Again, I appreciate you and your work. Thank you.
You should Google me.
I thank the distinguished representative of Iran for the gratitude. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Mexico. Madam, you have the floor.
Señora Presidenta, en primer lugar, quisiéramos agradecer a la señora Punzile Lambo Cunca por su presentación y por su liderazgo y compromiso en favor de la igualdad de género y el empoderamiento de la mujer. Agradecemos también el apoyo brindado por la región durante nuestra vicepresidencia y felicitamos al representante permanente de Uruguay, excelentísimo señor Gonzalo Conque, por su elección como presidente, así como el resto de los miembros de la mesa. Estamos seguros de que bajo su guía podremos continuar avanzando en el fortalecimiento de ONU Mujeres. Felicitamos al anterior presidente de la mesa, embajador Norman Spenke, por su excelente presidencia. Señora Presidenta, México agradece el informe sobre la contribución de ONU Mujeres para aumentar el liderazgo y la participación de las mujeres en los ámbitos de la paz y la seguridad y la respuesta humanitaria, el cual demuestra el importante papel que esta entidad tiene en la materia. Mi país reitera su compromiso de seguir trabajando estrechamente con ONU Mujeres y el resto del sistema para afianzar los progresos alcanzados hasta la fecha en el tema, pero sobre todo para seguir impulsando nuevas acciones conjuntas que permitan hacer realidad la igualdad entre los géneros y el empoderamiento de la mujer. Señora Presidenta, coincidimos en que es necesario encontrar nuevas fuentes de financiamiento para ONU Mujeres, así como en que es necesario diversificar la base de donantes y canalizar los diversos recursos destinados para la promoción de la igualdad de géneros dentro del sistema de Naciones Unidas. En este sentido, México quisiera expresar su reconocimiento a todos los países donantes y hacemos un llamado para que otros países contribuyan al presupuesto de ONU Mujeres para que así sigamos fortaleciendo todos a esta entidad de una forma sustentable. Señora Presidenta, desde el año 2013 México estableció como un principio básico de su gestión gubernamental la transversalización de la perspectiva de género, delimitando la política nacional para la igualdad de oportunidades y no discriminación contra las mujeres, coordinada por el Instituto Nacional de las Mujeres. A partir de ello, durante este año, se redoblarán los esfuerzos para avanzar en la implementación de la Declaración y Plataforma de Acción de Beijing y se impulsarán a nivel nacional distintas acciones a propósito de la conmemoración de los 20 años de esta plataforma. En este sentido, me permito anunciar que México hospedará el 6 y 7 de febrero la consulta regional para América Latina y el Caribe, preparatoria del 58 periodo de sesiones de la Comisión sobre la Condición Jurídica y Social de la Mujer, en la que se buscará identificar recomendaciones y prioridades que podrán ser abordados durante el próximo periodo de sesiones de la CSV. Finalmente, queremos subrayar que ante nuestra reelección como miembros de la Junta Ejecutiva, seguiremos promoviendo esquemas efectivos de cooperación triangular y sur-sur que apunten al empoderamiento de la mujer. Muchas gracias.
I thank the distinguished representative of Mexico. And I give the floor to the distinguished representative of Syria. Madam, you have the floor.
شكرا سيدة الرئيس لإعطائي الكلمة. سأتكلم باللغة العربية، أرجو أن يكون هناك ترجمة. شكرا سيدة الرئيس لإعطائي الكلمة. وفي الوقت الذي يشكر فيه وفد بلادي السيدة ملامو نكوكا على بيانها الذي ألقته هذا الصباح، كما يلحظ فيه جميع البيانات التي قدمتها الدول والتي تطلعت من خلالها لانعقاد مؤتمر جنيف 2. فإننا في نفس الوقت نشعر بالقلق بمحاولة البعض للأسف تحت مظلة UN Women إلى التأثير على أجواء انعقاد هذا المؤتمر من خلال الإيهام بوجود مشكلة تتعلق بمشاركة المرأة السورية في مثل هذا المؤتمر، وذلك في وقت يعرف فيه الجميع دون استثناء أن موضوع مشاركة المرأة السورية في الحياة السياسية، في الحياة الاقتصادية، في الحياة الاجتماعية، وفي جميع القطاعات، خاصة الأجندة المتعلقة بالمرأة والسلم والأمن، لم يكن يوما مشكلة بالنسبة لسوريا. لطالما كانت سوريا من الدول الرائدة في العالمين العربي والإسلامي في توفير جميع متطلبات تمكين المرأة والنهوض بأوضاعها وضمان حقوقها المتساوية مع الرجل. يكفي للدلالة على ذلك أن أذكر السادة الحاضرين بأن المرأة في بلادي تشغل منصب نائب رئيس الجمهورية، في حين أنها في دول أخرى معروفة ممنوعة من قيادة السيارة. للأسف أبرزت الأزمة الحالية في سوريا ظواهر غير إنسانية تتناقض مع القيم التي يؤمن بها الشعب السوري ومع كل المواثيق التي وقعت عليها سوريا. طبعا جاءت هذه الظواهر برفقة المرتزقة والتكفيريين الذين يتم استجلابهم علنا من كل بقاع الأرض ليفرضوا أفكارا وهابية ظلامية تنتقل من قيمة المرأة وتحيلها إلى جارية أو مجرد شيء لتفريغ عقدهم النفسية المريضة. هذا ناهيك عن فرض قيود على ملابسها، على حركتها، على عملها، على حصولها على التعليم، وعلى مشاركتها في الحياة السياسية. من وجهة نظر سوريا، لو كانت تلك الدول التي أعربت عن اهتمامها بمشاركة المرأة السورية في الحياة السياسية، ولو كان جهاز المرأة UN Women فعلا مهتم بحالة المرأة في سوريا، لأوجد حلولا لمعاناة الراهبات السوريات المختطفات منذ أشهر من قبل الجماعات المسلحة الإرهابية، وهي قضية باتت معروفة دوليا. لكان أوجد حلولا لحالة الفتيات والنساء السوريات في مخيمات اللاجئين في الأردن ولبنان وتركيا، حيث تتعرضن للاغتصاب والاعتداء والزواج المبكر والقسري، كل ذلك بالتعاون مع القائمين على إدارة المخيمات، وأحيانا بالتعاون مع منظمات إغاثية تدعي أنها تقدم مساعدات إنسانية لهن. ختاما السيد الرئيس، نحن نتطلع إلى انخراط UN Women ومديرته التنفيذية الجديدة السيدة نكوكا بشكل إيجابي في معالجة الظواهر الشاذة التي دخلت على المجتمع السوري، وذلك عبر التعاون مع الحكومة السورية أولا، وعبر المساهمة في الضغط على القوى الخارجية التأزيمية التي تدفع نحو مزيد من التصعيد وسفك الدماء كي توقف تدخلها الإرهابي في شؤون بلاد الداخلية وتضع حداً لانتهاكاتها للقانون الدولي ولميثاق الأمم المتحدة. ختاما السيد الرئيس، نحن نتطلع للإحاطة التي ستقدمها UN Women بشأن عمل UN Women في حالات الطوارئ. شكرا.
I thank the distinguished representative of Syria for her statement. We have just heard the last speaker on our list. I now invite the Secretary to make a response to the questions and issues that were raised both in the morning and this afternoon session. Secretary.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy President. I just would like to resist from trying to answer everything that was raised. Some of it that is technical is being left to my team, but also even on my side, because of time, I would not want to take more time because I know that we are very much behind on our agenda. So I will just make a few remarks and I indulge you to understand the situation. Firstly, just to thank you for a very meaningful discussion, the advice and the suggestions that we've received from you, as well as the encouragement about the direction that we're taking. We clearly have a situation where there's a lot of expectations about what we have to do, what we can do, but I'm also glad that there's an understanding on your part about the limited resources and the need for us to focus on generating more resources, especially the core resources. I'm very thankful for the member states that have increased their support, particularly those that are giving us additional core funding, but we're also just as happy about the support that we've received from non-core. But we take the point that our stability will depend on how much we achieve on getting the significant contribution on the non-core, reaching the double digits from member states that are more than 12 as core that are more than 12 in total. I also would like to indicate that some of the suggestions that you have made, such as the use of technology in our work, specific programmatic initiatives, we will study those and we will be able to share with you how we intend to use the suggestions and the advice that you have given us. I'm very happy that some of you are already doing something about Beijing +20 and related activities. It means that in earnest, the race to 2015 has started. I'm particularly happy with the observation, especially emphasized by Switzerland, about how we need to coordinate all of these activities in such a way that they've got a positive impact on what we'll emerge with in 2015. I also would like to thank my team for the report, which I think has generated a very interesting discussion with regards to the thematic evaluation. We see that there's a lot of expectation on your side on what we can do in the area of women, peace and security. I think you've just endorsed us as the premier and the leading institution as far as that aspect of work is concerned. And we take that with all the seriousness and we'll do our best to do more with the limited resources that we have. And of course, our emerging work on the humanitarian side is also just emerging, as Mr. Hendra indicated, but again, we've noted the suggestions that you have made, and as the work unfolds, we'll be able to take into account the suggestions that you have made. I'm going to leave it at that and promise you that I hope that when we meet the next time to report, we'll be able to report some of the concrete things that we have begun to do, in addition to already the extensive work that we're doing, which we reported this morning. Thank you.
I thank Madam Executive Director for the response. And now invite you to take to our presentations for this afternoon. We'll now hear a presentation on operational response on UN women in the context of Syria. I would now like to give the floor to the Executive Director, who will make a presentation on the very successful conference of Syrian women convened by the UN Women and the Netherlands this week. The conference ended with a strong recommendation for the upcoming peace. My apologies. Before going on to that, I would give the floor to Ms. Stiggin to answer some of the technical questions that were raised. So you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Very briefly, first of all, I would like to thank the 20+ delegations for their note of appreciations about the evaluation office in general and about this corporate evaluation in particular. Second, also thank you very much for those delegations that recommended some of the future corporate evaluations. I have the pleasure to inform you that those recommendations are very timely because the Evaluation Office of UN Women is drafting the corporate evaluation plan for the next 4 years. And this corporate evaluation plan will be able to cover the key aspect of the UN Women strategic plan. And the first evaluation, thematic evaluation that is in the pipeline is about economic empowerment that a couple of delegations already mentioned. And then just very briefly, there was a question about the stakeholders that have been interviewed for this evaluation. As I just mentioned, 82% are external stakeholders. Out of these 82%, 37% are member states, mainly at a decentralized level, I mean at country level. 32% are UN agencies other than UN Women. 21% are civil society organizations, including obviously women's organizations, and 9% are bilateral organizations. There was also another question about the theory of change. Perhaps I see that it was from the delegate from Djibouti, who is not here in the room, so perhaps I just deal with that directly with the delegate. Thank you.
I thank Mr. Sigurd for the explanation. I'd like to give the floor to Mr. Hendra for his response.
Thank you very much, Madam Vice President. I will also be extremely short. Just we very much appreciate the supportive and constructive comments to the management response. But of course, there are a lot of serious challenges remain, and that's why the targets that we have in our strategic plan are a 20% increase in terms of women's leadership and participation in peace and security. A lot of comments around the country level capacity. Again, as I said earlier, the evaluation ended at the point of time in which we as UN Women and you as our board approved the regional architecture and all the series of measures to strengthen our capacity at the country level: internal control framework, delegation of authority, leadership training, much more focus on results-based management. But that being said, it's very clear that we're taking a lot of steps in terms of how to further strengthen and our work in women, peace and security country level. A lot of comments about knowledge management, both internal, which we are really disseminating both the results of the evaluation, but also policy guidance in this area more broadly, but also externally in terms of all of our partners in the UN system. Also, though, I think the point was made that to be able to do this well, we need reliable and predictable core resources. On the UN-wide responses, we're working very, very closely with PBSO, with DPA, DPKO, UNDP, and others, particularly both at the global level, but increasingly now at the country and regional level. We did a training this year with PBSO, and we'll do that again. Also, a series of in terms from the normative framework, of course, we talked about 21-22, but of course, CEDAW had the General Resolution 30, and of course also at the end of September, the Peace Building Commission also, in terms of the relationship between women, peace and security, and women's economic empowerment. So that's very important. And of course, going forward on the global study, a number of questions were asked, and we're the chair of the UN Interagency Standing Committee on Women, Peace and Security. We've started a consultation process within the UN with our UN partners, so we'd be very happy to keep the board informed as that study evolves. And finally, I think a series of questions on our work in humanitarian action. Of course, we'll have a separate briefing on that, but time is very much running. But we do it very much in working with all of our partners, very much around our comparative advantage, value added, very much in line with what's in the strategic plan, which is peace and security and humanitarian action are shaped by women's leadership and participation. I'd be happy to answer some more queries offline, so to speak, because I think you're really running against the clock. Thank you.
I thank Mr. Hendria for his comments. As alluded earlier on, we'll now move on to the presentation on the Syrian country briefing. Without further ado, may I now request Madame Malambo Nkuka to give us the briefing on the case of Syria, the conference that they held in Geneva last week.
It is not used during the briefing, but a very strong member of my senior management team will lead us. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Executive Director and Under-Secretary General, Ms. Consile Mlambo Nguka. Good afternoon, colleagues, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. I'm really pleased to be here. And as you know, those of you who've been with us at our Executive Board, this is the session that we provide a glimpse of our work from the country level, from the regional level, of how we implement and respond to the needs of women and girls globally. And we thought that it would be very important to share with you some of the highlights and how we're responding to the refugee crisis, and as well as how we're supporting women's political and leadership to participate in the peace building of Syria. So I'm also pleased to introduce on the podium today two colleagues, Ms. Saba El Halak and Ms. Rula Rakbi, who have joined us today. They're Syrian women civil society members who participated in both the Amman and the recently concluded Geneva meeting, and who will share with us key highlights of the Syrian Women's Initiative for Peace and Democracy. We're also joined by Samira Al-Twajiri, our Regional Director in Cairo for Arab States, and she will share with us some of the work that we're doing primarily out of the Zatari refugee camp in Jordan, but also a little bit more. Well, I think we've all heard that there's no doubt that all of us can do more and must do more to support Syrian women, the humanitarian response, and the efforts towards peace. UN Women has been following a three-track approach to respond to the crisis. First, we're supporting Syrian women refugees' immediate needs with the support of the government of Netherlands, Finland, Norway, and Italy. UN Women works in Zatari refugee camp in Jordan to support Syrian women refugees' livelihoods through income-generating project and access to basic services, including psychosocial and legal support for gender-based violence survivors. Second, UN Women is contributing with analysis and data to ensure that UN planning and response is informed and gender sensitive. We've conducted needs assessments of Syrian women refugees in the camps and in host communities in Jordan, Lebanon, and Iraq to identify the specific needs of women and girls and to inform UN planning and humanitarian response. Third, UN Women is supporting Syrian women's organizing and collective voice to engage in the peace process, as our Executive Director and Under-Secretary General highlighted this morning. Here, with many thanks to the support of the Government of the Netherlands and other international partners, Syrian women expressed to Special Envoy Brahimi their demands to have a greater and more meaningful role in the peace talks. At a meeting that just was recently concluded in Geneva with 48 women, Syrian women from inside, outside Syria, they came together with a unified vision and concrete recommendations and issued an outcome statement that was given to Joint Special Envoy Brahimi. The outcome document launched the Syrian Women's Initiative for Peace and Democracy. In line with Security Council Resolution 1325/2122, UN Women will continue to support Syrian women's participation in the peace process and also ensure greater visibility for the voices of a diverse spectrum of Syrian women. I would now like to invite my colleagues, Ms. Saba El Halak and then Ms. Rula Rakbi to share the other way around, to share with us the key highlights of their initiative for peace and democracy. Thank you.
السيدات والسادة، بداية أحب أن أتوجه بالشكر إلى هيئة الأمم المتحدة للمرأة لإتاحة الفرصة لنا للاجتماع الحر الذي جرى في جنيف والذي نتج عنه مبادرة سوريات من أجل السلام والديمقراطية، وانبثق عنها لجنة متابعة تم اختيارها بالتوافق بين المشاركات. سوف أبدأ بقراءة البيان الختامي للمبادرة. تتوجه أنظار السوريين والعالم أجمع إلى مؤتمر جنيف 2 حول السلام في بلدنا سوريا. نساء سوريات مدنيات متنوعات في الانتماء من مختلف مناطق سوريا ومنطقتها.
Can I ask the distinct visitor to just to hear the is that a point of order? If I may ask if you could hear the distinguished representative of Syria to say what she has to say.
شكرا سيد الرئيس لإعطاء الكلمة. لقد قلت في بياني السابق بأننا نتطلع إلى تعاون السيدة نجوكا مع الحكومة السورية في إطار عملها مع النساء السوريات، وهو الأمر الذي تفرضه ولايتها عليها. The mandate of UN Women. نقطة ثانية، من المعروف بأن UN Women ليست جزءا من خطة الاستجابة الإنسانية المتعلقة بسوريا شارك، وبالتالي لا أعتقد بأنه يحق لUN Women أن تتحدث عن الحالة الإنسانية في سوريا وأن تعطي تفاصيل حول استجابتها الإنسانية من دون أن تكون جزءا من الخطة ومن دون التشارك والتشاور مع الحكومة السورية. النقطة الثالثة، هذا الاجتماع هو اجتماع رسمي للأمم المتحدة، ونعتقد بأنه في الاجتماعات الرسمية عندما يتم عقد جلسات خاصة بدول بعينها يتم التشاور مع ممثلي هذه الدول المعنية في الأمم المتحدة. نعتقد بأن عقد هذه الجلسة والسماح بمشاركات لا نعرف ما هو المركز القانوني لهن بالمشاركة في الجلسة الرسمية كمتحدثات رئيسيات هو سابقا. أكرر، هذا اجتماع رسمي لم يتم التنسيق مع الحكومة السورية عبر وفدها الدائم هنا في نيويورك حول عقده. نرجو أن لا يتم استغلال هذه الاجتماعات الرسمية أو منابر الأمم المتحدة بما يخالف ميثاق الأمم المتحدة نفسها. نود طلب رأي الإدارة القانونية في عقد مثل هذه الجلسة وفي السماح لمشاركات بالتحدث كمتحدثات رئيسيات في الجلسة الرئيسية قبل أن تستمر الجلسة. أكرر، نود طلب رأي الإدارة القانونية قبل السماح بالحديث في هذه الجلسة لمشاركات ليس لهن صفة قانونية.
I think the Syrian delegate, let me consult with the Secretariat.
We would like to thank the distinguished delegate from Syria, and just wanted to clarify that, in fact, while there is a humanitarian response inside Syria, and we're not involved as UN Women because we don't have presence in Syria, we are active and member of the Regional Response Plan, the United Nations Regional Response Plan, in 5 other countries, Iraq, Jordan, Lebanon, Turkey, and Egypt. And we very much look forward and welcome work with the government under our mandate for the Security Council Resolution 1325-2122, which brings us the mandate. And we're also supporting UN agencies to ensure the specific needs of women and girls are brought to the attention of the UN family. But we would like to do this closely together with all partners, including with the Syrian government. But just to clarify, we are not operational inside of Syria. We don't have presence. As you know, UN Women presence is in 91 countries, and in 60 of these we have representatives, we have a full-fledged office in other countries, we have programmatic presence. We look forward to having presence inside Syria and working closely with all partners, including the government. And I would like to ask if it's not a problem to the distinguished representative from Syria to just hear the colleagues, because I think they are quite, we would not have taken on anything that's partisan. This is purely related to women's political leadership and having a voice in all processes. I have heard them speak, and I can guarantee that we don't want to turn this into a political discussion. It's also a way, we do this in every session. We also would like to share what we're doing in the Za'atari camp. So it's quite practical, and of course we would invite you to give feedback after the session if that's okay.
Thank you, Secretary. I see the distinguished delegate of Syria asking for the floor. You have the floor.
شكرا سيدة الرئيس، وأشكر كذلك سكرتارية UN Women على إجابتها. أعتقد بأن الجواب الذي تلقيته فعلا يفسر ويعطي ربما صحة لمداخلتي. UN Women ليست موجودة داخل سوريا ولا تتعاون مع الحكومة السورية، وهذا بناء على طلبها. الحكومة السورية منفتحة للتعاون مع جميع وكالات الأمم المتحدة، وأعتقد بأن الأمثلة واضحة. أوتشا، يونيسف، UNHCR، ولا أريد أن أعدل، والجميع يزور سوريا بشكل أسبوعي. لا أحد يمنع UN Women من التعاون مع الحكومة السورية. أنتم لا تريدون التعاون معنا، مع أننا قلنا وبجلسات كثيرة ومنها جلسة مجلس الأمن حول المرأة والسلم والأمن بأننا على استعداد للتعاون مع UN Women ومع السيدة نكوكا، وتمنينا لها التوفيق. هذه النقطة الأولى. ثانياً، ما يجري اليوم ليس نقاشاً إنسانياً، ليس نقاشاً حيادياً، وإنما هو تسييس لعمل UN Women، وإن هذا مؤسف للغاية. UN Women منذ بدايتها كانت حيادية جداً، واليوم تتغير، ونحن هذا يجعلنا نقرأ كثيراً. لماذا؟ هل هو بسبب تغيير المديرة التنفيذية؟ هل هو بسبب تغيير رئيس المجلس؟ لا نعرف، ولكن النقاش الذي يجري اليوم هو سابقة ولم يجري من قبل في الاجتماعات الرسمية لUN Women. إذا كنتم تريدون التحدث عن country specific situation, you have to consult with the concerned member state قبل عقده في اجتماع رسمي. أما إذا كنتم تودون التحدث عن موضوع إنساني خارج منبر الأمم المتحدة أو في side event أو في اجتماع غير رسمي فلكم كامل الحرية. أكرر مرة أخرى، نحن نعترض على هذه الجلسة أن تتم بهذه الطريقة، وطلبت رأي الإدارة القانونية في استضافة مشاركين ليس لهم مركز قانوني يتحدثون بالنيابة عن الشعب السوري والممثل هنا في الأمم المتحدة من قبلنا نحن وفد سوريا لدى الأمم المتحدة. شكرا.
distinguished representative of Syria. It came to me that it seemed that we may have to, given the light of the issues that have been raised and the concerns that I've raised before us, I wanted to put to the floor if we could move on to the next presentation. If I could. I see the permanent representative of Solomon Islands going to take the floor. So you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I think let me make a I think just to endorse your proposal, since we I think it is a matter of not only procedure that is being sorted as well as legal advice. I think we are pressed for time. Let us move on to the next item, and we can come back to that if that's acceptable to everyone, so that while work is still happening behind the scene in terms of seeking whatever advice, but let us move on to the next item if I wish to suggest. Thank you.
I thank Ambassador of Solomon Islands for that comment. So if I see no other objections to that suggestion, I put to the distinguished delegates that we move on to the next agenda item, which is the presentation of the humanitarian strategy. I now see that there's no objection. I now give the floor to Ms. Coslet, Director, Program and Division, to make the presentation. Madam, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We're just waiting for the presentation to be put up. So if you just give us a couple of minutes, and I think it's already there. Okay, very efficient. Good afternoon. We're now moving to the session this afternoon on our presenting our humanitarian strategy. And we very much look forward to feedback from all of you before we finalize it. And let me just start with a couple of remarks and then go into the PowerPoint. You've all heard that humanitarian action must address the distinct and different needs of women and girls, boys and men, starting with an assessment of their needs, appropriate response, and allocation of resources. When humanitarian action is not gender responsive, it leads to the entrenchment and often further regression of negative social norms. Seeing communities and individuals as victims and beneficiaries rather than agents of change and recovery can further impact women and girls' ability to take ownership and rebuild their lives. At the moment, there's no institutional coordination of gender and women's empowerment in humanitarian action. In the absence of coordination and leadership on gender and women's empowerment, humanitarian action will continue to fail women and girls. And later on, I will speak a little bit more about that, especially in the context of the Interagency Standing Committee. UN General Assembly Resolution 64-289 on system-wide coherence, establishing UN Women
provided UN Women with the mandate to lead, coordinate, and promote the accountability of the United Nations system in its work on gender equality and the empowerment of women. This includes the work of the United Nations system on humanitarian action. You will have also remembered, those of you who were here when the Secretary General made his comprehensive proposal for the new entity and set out a mission statement for UN Women, which included humanitarian action. And this, if you'll see, is up there, which includes that the empowerment of women and the achievement of equality between women and men as partners and beneficiaries of development, human rights, humanitarian action, and peace and security. Gender equality and women's empowerment is a collective effort and a collective responsibility of the entire United Nations system. And therefore, UN Women's role in humanitarian action will complement and enhance the work of UN entities and support accountability to gender equality and women's empowerment commitments. Our approach is responsive to national and regional needs and priorities, working within national UN country teams, humanitarian country teams, and regional humanitarian country teams. At the country level, with maximum leveraging of different capacities, expertise of agencies on the ground. At the global level, I did mention there's no systemic coordination of gender and women's empowerment and humanitarian action. And it doesn't help that UN Women is not a member of the Interagency Standing Committee, which is the global coordinating mechanism for humanitarian action. Responsibility for the task of ensuring that humanitarian action integrates a gender dimension falls largely to the Interagency Standing Committee's sub-working group on gender and humanitarian action at the normative level, and to its operational arm, the Gender Capacity Project, what you will have heard as GenCap, as well as a handful of gender champions at the field level. Relying heavily on the experience and personal initiatives of the few, rather than promoting a standardized approach, means this arrangement is not systemic, effective, or sustainable. We believe UN Women is uniquely positioned to lead and coordinate on gender equality and women's empowerment in humanitarian action at the normative and policy level of the humanitarian system to support the efforts of the Interagency Standing Committee. Currently, UN Women is a co-chair, along with the International Federation of the Red Cross and Red Crescent, UNHCR, and Women's Refugee Commission of the IASC, Reference Group on Gender and Humanitarian Action. We will continue also to enhance our existing partnerships with UN agencies such as UN OCHA, UNDP, UNICEF, UNFPA, UNHCR, and UNISDR. They're important partners at the global, regional, and country levels. Building relationships with national, international, humanitarian stakeholders and organizations is also essential. Our strong relationship with the women's movement and gender machineries at national and local levels enables us also to incorporate the voices and enhance the participation of local women organizations at all levels and areas of humanitarian action. It's also a critical time when we're engaging in humanitarian action, when new developments and reform processes are shaping the agenda for the future of the humanitarian system. This is the transformative agenda you've all heard of, the World Humanitarian Summit, and the post-2015 framework on disaster risk reduction, and the new focus on resilience, accountability to affected populations, and build back better. We'll definitely build on this momentum and leverage and influence humanitarian action for stronger provisions on gender equality and women's empowerment. The engagement of UN Women in humanitarian action covers preparedness and disaster risk reduction, response, and early recovery. Upon demand at country level, UN Women will support inclusion and participation of women in the development of preparedness strategies and in their implementation at the national and community level. We'll continue to build capacity of grassroots women's organizations and other national stakeholders
to advocate and influence decision-making and provide technical support in developing and implementing disaster risk reduction programs. UN Women will complement UN efforts by ensuring that in addition to meeting the needs of women and girls, boys and men in affected populations in humanitarian response and early recovery, we will ensure accountability and participation of women and girls in all decisions. We will contribute and continue to contribute, as we've been doing it already, to the post-conflict needs assessments and post-disaster needs assessments and in the development of national recovery frameworks. To demonstrate UN Women's commitment to strengthen its capacity in gender and humanitarian action, the Strategic Plan 2014-17, which you approved and helped us and guided us through, has a separate outcome on humanitarian action under Impact Area 4. This strategy that we're now finalizing further elaborates how we will implement this strategic plan going forward. You may know that we established a humanitarian unit in October 2012 and recently recruited a new gender and humanitarian action advisor who's sitting here at the end, Blerto Aliko, who joined us this month. UN Women has also recruited a disaster risk reduction experts for its Fiji office covering the Pacific. In addition, we have, thankfully to the Australian Red Cross, an expert focused on capacity building of gender focal points from the Pacific humanitarian teams and across relevant Pacific institutions in gender and disasters. Solomon Islands, I recall the distinguished delegate from the Solomon Islands was inquiring about this. Solomon Islands is among the target countries for training of government staff working in the area of response and recovery to ensure that gender and women issues are properly addressed in disaster risk strategies. We're also recruiting humanitarian advisors for the 2 regional offices in Africa. UN Women will also have a humanitarian expert co-hosted with OCHA in its Asia Pacific regional office this year. We have a GenCap advisor as well as a humanitarian recovery advisor out of our office in Jordan supporting the Syria refugees in Zaatari camp. Putting the necessary capacity in place to deliver on the commitments of humanitarian action in the strategic plan is a high priority. But we're also establishing surge capacity and an active roster to support UN Women country offices in response to crisis. And we'll also roll out capacity in this area for our staff and our partners. So we now go on to discuss a little bit about the normative coordination and leadership, which I've outlined to you as through coordination mechanism, existing coordination mechanisms of the Interagency Standing Committee. But we will also ensure that humanitarian policies, operational procedures, and standards adequately mainstream gender equality and women's empowerment as they're developed, and that the commitments already in place are duly honored. And UN Women will also provide member states and national authorities with the necessary gender equality and women's empowerment guidance as they further develop national strategies on humanitarian action. On an ongoing basis in countries with field presence, UN Women will provide UN and humanitarian country teams with the necessary guidance to ensure that humanitarian needs assessment, strategic planning, and programming adequately address gender equality and women empowerment. We will work through coordinating mechanisms such as the cluster teams and establish gender theme groups. In the context of rapid onset or developing crisis, where we don't have capacity, we will provide the necessary surge capacity and work through other UN partners and stakeholders to ensure a coordinated effort in humanitarian country teams and the cluster system. In contexts where UN Women can add value, we do also have some existing programmatic work in targeted interventions. And we will also support evidence-based knowledge, because many times we need to generate analysis to inform humanitarian strategic planning and advocacy. Immediately, we plan to deliver on our commitments in the strategic plan and to capitalize on the current momentum. We have identified the following as interventions of priority. UN Women to seek membership in the Interagency Standing Committee and continue engagement in the Gender Reference Group and GenCap Steering Committee. Establish and maintain UN Women crisis management capacity and develop internal policy and standard guidance on humanitarian action for UN Women staff. Undertake evidence-based research and knowledge dissemination to inform advocacy, hold the UN system accountable, and provide best practices for gender-responsive humanitarian actions. Influence normative policies, frameworks, and guidelines, including, in particular, the implementation of the transformative agenda, the post-2015 framework on disaster risk reduction, and the upcoming World Humanitarian Summit. We would also like to pilot, we are discussing with UNHQ to pilot in 6 countries with OCHA a model that would give us lessons learned to then scale up in other regions. Support the engagement of national gender machineries, civil society and grassroots in humanitarian action, and enhance our partnership with international and regional gender and humanitarian action actors. I would like to thank you for your attention this afternoon. I know it's been a long day. We do look forward to your comments, and we listen carefully, my colleagues and I, very much to also your comments and questions in the morning. So we welcome your specific feedback on the strategy, and I would also ask my colleagues and also, John Hendra, who can also provide some additional information on this. But we look forward to your views. Thank you very much.
I thank the Secretary for the information briefing. Now open the floor for comments and questions. I recognize the distinguished representative of Djibouti. Madame, you have the floor.
Merci Madame la Présidente. Je voudrais remercier UNIFAM pour la présentation sur la stratégie pour l'action humanitaire de l'organisation. Je voudrais faire très rapidement des commentaires qui vont être très succincts. Je voudrais tout d'abord exprimer la satisfaction et le plaisir que ma délégation a de voir que UNIFAM s'engage dans ce domaine. Donc l'organisation était relativement absente, qui est un domaine très, très important. Donc si on veut renforcer la protection des droits des femmes et si on veut assurer l'égalité et la promotion de ces droits. Je voudrais surtout aussi ici saluer les mesures prises et les étapes qui sont envisagées pour intégrer le ISC par UN Women. Les priorités qui ont été mentionnées dans la présentation sont également à saluer et à encourager. Et ma délégation espère que dans la prochaine évaluation, nous aurons des conclusions et des recommandations concrètes dans la réalisation des objectifs fixés. Nous nous félicitons également du fait que dans le plan stratégique 2014-2017, cette orientation nouvelle et cette volonté d'impliquer ONU Femmes dans l'action humanitaire aux côtés des autres agences des Nations Unies est reflétée. Et je voudrais juste terminer peut-être par une question sur la résilience pendant les interventions. Je pense qu'il est très important de veiller à construire et à aider les communautés qui sont touchées par pas seulement les conflits, c'est très important d'aider ces communautés, bien entendu, mais également aussi dans les situations d'urgence dues aux catastrophes naturelles. Je pense qu'il est important d'appuyer l'action d'ONU Femmes sur la construction et l'établissement de capacités de résilience de communautés auprès desquelles elle intervient pour pouvoir permettre que, une fois la situation d'urgence terminée, le cours du développement puisse se poursuivre sans grande difficulté. Et je pense que d'autres agences sœurs ont une expérience et qu'il serait important je pense notamment à UNICEF, qu'il serait important de considérer lorsque une femme va entreprendre son action humanitaire. Je vous remercie.
I thank distinguished representative of Djibouti. May I suggest that we take the next 4 speakers and then I'll ask the Secretary to make a response. The next on my list is Solomon Islands. Reverend Johnson, we have
Thank you, Madam President. Just on the disaster map, on the strategy plan, we certainly, I think, for us, I think what we would like to also see, as I've stated early in the morning, is basically try to look at disasters that are irreversible. What do we do? I'm really talking about sea level rise, I'm really talking about ocean acidification and so forth. So somehow I need to see that, because if we don't have that, it's difficult to keep talking about disaster, because I think disaster is something that is constantly with us. One thing we note about disaster, it knows no boundary. It's not so much just the women, the children, but basically the whole community and the whole country that is actually needs to be need to address. In terms of trying to look at how the strategy sits with other UN entities and programs, this is where basically when you look at, even with the Pacific, when you look at UNDP program, you look at UNDAF program, you look at UN Women, everybody's doing something on disaster. So basically, who is really doing what? And this is probably how we utilize the money. And I think my view has always been, I think, for UN Women to be a little bit more strategic, to build resilience. And resilience in the sense of investing on gender in terms of looking at renewable energy, trying to do something in which the women can help themselves in not only dealing with after disaster, but taking themselves away from keep cutting trees just to cook, but to use other solar or other renewable methods of cooking. The other aspect I thought I'd mention is the one dealing with the relationship between UN Women and NGOs, not only UN Women, but in our case, even when the tsunami hit, the attention received was more to Oxfam, to NGOs, rather than to the government. and right now we're having populations criticizing World Vision for having three or four vehicles, and they're still waiting for, and people are still living in tents. So I think we need to somehow see where does, try to manage these sort of things in such a way that the government, the state remains in control. Because I think too often we're seeing we're becoming spectators to a lot of these things. It is something that is very popular, that I think it generates so much money is available, but I think it's available basically for certain sectors of the society. I thought I'd mention that, and once again commend the work done on this, and I hope we can iron out some of these duplication, but it comes back to many of the points that I've been raising in terms of, for some of us, we actually manage from outside of the region, and this is why I think country focus really needs to come in, and I think the disconnect between the region and country needs to be addressed when looking at these strategies. Thank you very much.
I thank the distinguished Ambassador of Solomons for his comments. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of the Republic of Korea. So you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will be very brief. And first of all, I would like to thank the Secretary for the very informative presentation. My delegation commends UN Women for its efforts to establish its humanitarian action plan that we look forward to. However, this new area could add to the financial constraints the entity is currently facing. I would like to ask how UN Women's integrated budget 2014 to 2015 will reflect the humanitarian action plan. According to the budget estimates, $87.6 million are allocated to outcome number 4, namely peace and security and humanitarian action are shaped by women's leadership and participation. Will the funds allocated to this particular outcome also go to humanitarian activities? Secretary's view and elaboration would be very much appreciated. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of the Republic of Korea. And I give the floor to the distinguished representative of Japan. So you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Good to see you up there. It's not the easy job, right? I miss it, but I congratulate you. I have some questions and remarks. I first of all thank you for the briefing and the presentation that our delegation been asking for, and also there's some papers in advance. Regarding the women's humanitarian response strategy, we'd like to hear more on, it's somehow difficult, it's some other member states earlier asked, how you will strengthen its work in humanitarian action, and how do you better collaboration with UN system partners, in particular with OCHA. And also on the process of the developing the strategy, I don't know, maybe I missed it, but when are you going to complete this strategy, and how UN Women going to present it? And is there any more windows that the member states can contribute? That's the questions. And also, allow me to make a short intervention regarding some statements made by some member states on Japan earlier today. Since those statements are different from our government position, we would like to submit a paper on our position later. Thank you.
I thank Japan for their comments. I now invite the distinguished representative of United Kingdom. You have the floor, Madam.
Thank you, Madam President. And thank you very much to UN Women for the presentation on the humanitarian strategy. Just have a few comments. We see a very important role for UN Women in humanitarian response, and we're very grateful for this elaboration of your priorities. We believe strongly that UN Women's comparative advantage is helping to build the capacity of other UN organisations to ensure the needs of women and girls are taken into account from the outset of the humanitarian crises. This is therefore primarily about helping other agencies to improve their response, ensuring that a gender lens is applied onto needs assessment and that gender is taken into account in programming, rather than having an operational role, given the large number of actors in this area. Member States' demands and expectations need to be carefully balanced and managed. An effective coordination with other actors and with the cluster system is critically important. We note the role of the GBB area of responsibility in coordinating gender-based responses, and we'd like clarification on how UN Women sees itself fitting with that. UN Women can also play a very important role in ensuring lessons from research and analysis are effectively disseminated to other agencies. It is important to ensure that this analysis is robust and accurate. We hope that UN Women will focus on helping to take forward commitments they made at the event hosted in London last year, Keep Her Safe, Call to Action in Humanitarian Emergencies. Given the complexity of the issues at stake, it is important that there is adequate time for consultation and discussion with Member States. We note that in the management response to the evaluation this morning, UN Women undertakes to consult with this board session, but we just wondered what further opportunities there will be for Member States to contribute to finalisation of the strategy. We note also the comment about resource mobilisation and the comment from my distinguished colleague from the Republic of Korea, and would welcome more information about this. Given the need to make sure that competing demands are aligned with UN Women's strategic plan and that resources are allocated strategically, will the resource mobilisation mentioned be aligned with UN Women's overall fundraising efforts? Thank you very much.
I thank the distinguished representative of the United Kingdom for our comments. And I give the floor to the distinguished representative of Ireland. So you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In the interest of being brief, I shall be. I'd like to thank you for the presentation today and for the opportunity for this briefing. I think it provides a strong basis going forward and outlines some of the next steps. We look forward to the finalisation of the humanitarian strategy. We particularly welcome UN Women's efforts to strengthen its own capacity in this area, and I think it's been clearly outlined a number of the measures that have been taken in that regard. There's a clear demand for UN Women's support and leadership in humanitarian response. We would echo the points of other member states of the importance of coordination and collaboration and partnership, particularly in relation to FODJA. As noted, we look forward to the finalisation of the strategy and the opportunity to input in its finalisation. Thank you very much.
I think the distinguished representative of Ireland, at this point in time, I would like to give the opportunity to the Secretary to respond to the questions and comments that raised. Secretary, do you have the floor?
Thank you very much. I'd just like to make a few, 3 or 4 broad comments to link through some of the comments made this morning as well, and then pass to the meeting as well. Just in terms of, I think we heard consistently this morning the importance of working with other humanitarian partners. I think the permanent representative of the Solomon Islands particularly posed the question, what can gender do? So in terms of what we're doing in terms of other partners, I mean, I think the OCHA has been raised, and Golden will address that. But in the presentation she gave, we've had a lot of collaboration with them, and are looking at doing a pilot in 6 countries. But I do think it's very important to go back to our strategic plan in terms of looking at what we are trying to achieve in the next 4 years in terms of humanitarian action. And there, I think, as the delegate from Australia talked about, is the disproportionate impact of disasters and crises on women in particular. And I think what we are trying to do in terms of the plan is really looking at how we enhance the coordination of the whole system and how we enhance the accountability of the UN system from a humanitarian perspective in terms of its, again, disproportionate impact on women. I think part of that is really in terms of the evidence base, and we need to go, and I think as someone noted this morning as well, there's been a paucity of disaggregated data, gender disaggregated data in terms of the recent crisis in the Philippines, but really working with our partners in terms of really moving forward on the evidence-based knowledge that's needed in terms of performance measurement, but also accountability frameworks and gender responsive action. I think also looking at enhancing the national and regional capacity of institutions to be able to implement gender responsive policies and measures for humanitarian action. And then finally, I think ensuring that existing coordination mechanisms are much more gender responsive and better analyze and address really the distinct needs of women and girls. So, you know, there are a lot of actors, but I think there's also, unfortunately, quite a bit of evidence that at the global level, there's not enough coordination of gender and women's empowerment in humanitarian action. It's done through the gender and humanitarian action subgroup. It's done through a number of the Gen Cap. It's also done largely through a number of champions. But it's really important to make it a much more sustainable response. So really in line with our areas of concentration, but also our focus on accountability and making the UN system more accountable. This is our strategy. With that being said, we need to make sure that our comparative advantage and our niche is very clear. Also very much appreciate the comments on resilience and looking at crises and disasters of an irreversible nature. As you know, we've already recruited a disaster risk reduction expert for the Fiji office that covers the Pacific. But that gets to me, my next issue is the dilemma one hears. I mean, I think it is very important to manage expectations. In terms of our institutional budget, we have one post, I believe, that's funded from for the humanitarian team. We have 3 other posts. And a lot of people want us to take action. So I think, and increase our collaboration across the UN system, but particularly to make sure that the UN's response is much more gender responsive, that the disproportionate impact on women and girls is much more featured in how the broader humanitarian family responds. But to do this, though, we do need some increase in resources. And certainly, I think in terms of our funding, we are looking at this to be aligned around both core and non-core in terms of what we're trying to achieve through the strategic plan. But I would appeal, I think, to board members, for those who can support us in terms of how we elaborate this policy. It's enormously important. I think we are not looking to duplicate what any part of the UN system is doing, but I think we are looking to make sure that women and girls are really addressed in humanitarian response. And I think by many, if not all accounts, they are not and are often seen towards the end of the process. So I think we need to really manage expectations on one side, but I think in terms of really trying to, as we further evolve the strategy, we very much welcome what we have seen in other areas where a number of member states can empower the organization financially to play the role that you would like us to see. But again, totally aligned with what we've outlined with you and already been approved in the strategic plan, which were the 3 areas I started off in my response.
Thank you, John. Let me just thank all the distinguished delegates for your comments, for your support. We expect to finish the strategy by the end of March. And with the comments that we hear today and also from the UN system partners and other humanitarian stakeholders, we are very happy to share this with our executive board and have you look at it before we put the final stamp on it, and very much appreciate that. I think it was the distinguished representative from the Republic of Korea who asked about the IB and how much resources we have. I mean, to be very honest, we don't have a lot of resources for this capacity, and that's why, I mean, let me just clarify, we have 3 positions in the field. 2 of these, which I mentioned in my presentation, are under the institutional budget. The others that I mentioned in regional offices are funded from non-core or core funds of UN Women. I'd like to recognize the support of Sweden under an umbrella program that has allowed us to fund capacity at regional level in terms of policy and technical expertise. So some of them are being funded from non-core. But we do also have, in addition to the strategy, a financial proposal that we will be raising some for some aspects of the mandate from member states in non-core funding. I think John covered very much how we're planning to work with the rest of the UN system, and I think the distinguished delegate from the United Kingdom also said in her intervention, we very much look to influencing, to supporting the rest of the UN system, the greater humanitarian actors, the humanitarian country teams, to really make sure that the UN response has taken into account the needs of women and girls. That is our primary task. That's why we want to influence it at the global level, regional level, and at country level, because this is where we believe we can have the greatest impact. We have discussed with OCHA the 6 pilot countries. We're doing the final discussions, so I don't want to name countries right now, but we've selected and proposed countries in 3 of them where we have strong presence, and in 3 where we don't have strong presence, so try out, test how it would work. But very much along the line of how we work to support others and not just roll up our sleeves and try to respond ourselves, because we couldn't, as you well know. I just want to give Blerta, my colleague who just joined, to head our humanitarian work, to give us, the response on the GBV cluster. Thank you.
Within the priority interventions that already were mentioned in the presentation from Gulden, of course, the coordination and leadership comes as the primary focus of our work, and influencing others to basically be integrating and engendering humanitarian action while having a system-wide accountability for gender, as it is outlined into the Interagency Standing Committee in 2008 in their policy for gender mainstreaming. However, in countries where we have a comparative advantage, and we have a couple of examples on that, is that UN Women has shown capacity and technical leadership in being able to work both in coordinating the gender-based violence sub-working groups at the country level, as well as supporting the sub-working group within the protection cluster or sector to basically provide evidence base that has informed the needs assessment, has informed the response strategies, as well as the advocacy and the funding. And I would like to mention here the gender-based violence and child protection assessment that was done with a focus on early marriage that was done in Jordan, where UN Women led and that informed the whole sector strategy and funding, as well as the gender analysis that were carried in a number of sectors. So as well, there are strategies like with joint programming that have been experimented elsewhere, jointly with UNFPA, UNHCR, as well as UNICEF, where jointly we could bring value, leveraging our partnerships we have with gender machineries in the country, the work we do in ending violence against women, as well as the network we have at the grassroots level in establishing the standard operating procedures, in training, in building local capacities, so that for the future disaster or conflict, our national partners are better placed to respond rather than having all the time to deal with international organizations.
I thank the Secretary for the comments and responses to the member states' questions and comments. I don't see any member states asking for the floor at this stage. So I invite the representative of the non-government organization from US Birth Support to make a statement. You have the floor.
Okay. Thanks. My statement is short. I know it's getting late. My administration welcomes the UN Women Executive Board 2014 regular session, as we strongly believe women's rights are highly important for the betterment of today's society and humanity in general. We duly welcome the election of the new president for the 2014 fiscal year and welcome the positive goals set by the executive members of UN Women and forever assuring the ability to assist women and girls around the world. Madam Chair, since the creation of migrant offices, we are seeing the awfulness of humanity and abuses suffered by women and girls within certain member states at the hands of loved ones, employers, and the very people who are charged with protecting citizens and the members of the population. We welcome the positive outreach program underway by UN Women and look forward to the overall reduction of violence against girls, women and girls everywhere in order to guarantee a just and free society. We sincerely look forward to the inclusion of girls within the educational system of the member states and inclusion of women within the workforce of today's society. We duly look forward to the overall reduction of crimes against our mothers, our sisters, and or our children, therefore ensuring a more peaceful society and a deeper respect for humanity. I represent two offices, so this is one for U.S. Burn and the Office of the Commissioner for Burns. Look forward to the development of additional initiatives that are based upon resilient inclusiveness for women and girls, regardless of their nationality, age, or social status. It should forever be considered a human right and not a privilege. In closing, we give our collective thanks to your willingness to serve the greater good of today's women and our little girls of tomorrow's generation. Thank you.
And thank you, representative from the NGO community, for his comments. Distinguished delegates, this ends our segment of special briefing. Let me also inform members of the Executive Board that the briefing on Syria will be rescheduled at this point. And then you will also be informed the timing and when the session will be held. Let me at this point give the floor to the Secretary to make a comment on this.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I just want to bring to your attention that after consultation with senior management, I would like to inform the Executive Board that the briefing on the humanitarian response of UN Women in favor of Syrian women will be rescheduled in an informal setting within 2 weeks, and we will let you know when that will happen. Thank you very much.
I thank the Secretary for the explanation. I now turn the floor to Ms. Lakshmi Puri, Deputy Executive Director, who will introduce a discussion on the harmonization of report. Ms. Puri, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to draw your attention to the paper that has already been circulated, giving a background on this issue of harmonization of the reporting cycle and whether or not to have a single report on both, which covers both the implementation of the strategic plan and operational activities, or to have two separate reports, one dealing with the implementation of the strategic plan and the other dealing with operational activities. Now, in the light of the QCPR resolution of the General Assembly and recent follow-up ECOSOC resolutions on operational activities, UN Women is seeking your guidance on the eventuality of presenting a consolidated report, merging the operational activities report and the report on progress made on the strategic plan at its annual session in June 2014. Now, as you know, funds and programs have already decided to consolidate these reports, and we would like to use this half an hour discussion, now I can reduce to 5 minutes discussion, for the Executive Board to clarify which option UN Women should follow. So your direction on that. Option 1, UN Women consolidate the operational activities report and the annual report on the implementation of the strategic plan into one annual report and submit this first consolidated report to the Executive Board at its annual session in 2014. This option is in compliance with the QCPR and the practices of the funds and programs. And then the option 2 is UN Women keep presenting 2 separate reports, and this is not in line with the recommendation of the QCPR, and of course we must point out involves additional outlay of resources and does not make the best use of UN Women financial resources, increases the transaction costs due to the preparation of 2 official reports. So we seek your guidance on this. I know that some of your general statements had already, opening statements had already referred to this, and some of you had very kindly indicated that they could go along with option 1 since it really would release resources which can otherwise be used for programming on the ground. So the floor is open.
I thank Ms. Puri for your comments. Executive Board members, the Secretary is now seeking our guidance on this important matter. So now have a list here. I invite the representative from the United Kingdom to take the floor. Madam, you have the floor.
Apologies, I actually was requesting the floor in response to the announcement that was made before this agenda item, so perhaps I would be best to say that under any other business, or would you rather I make it there? Okay, so it was in response to the announcements about the rescheduling of the briefing. Obviously we are in the hands of the Secretariat and completely understand that sometimes last minute changes have to be made, but we did want to note how disappointed we were that the informal briefing planned under agenda item 4 on the operational response to UN Women was not able to go ahead. We do understand that it's important for Member States to be fully on board with the holding of such informal briefings, but we do hope these briefings will be able to go ahead in the future.
I thank the representative of United Kingdom. I'd like to give the floor to the representative of United States of America. You have the floor, Madam.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. In response to the question from the Secretariat, my delegation strongly supports option 1. We think it's been a very consistent message from the QCPR and also the other funds and programs that we are seeking greater alignment and reduction of opportunity costs wherever possible. So we think option 1 makes a lot of common sense. It's what the other funds and programs are doing. We strongly encourage UN Women to do it as well. And if I may, Madam Chair, just also a short comment on the announcement by the Secretariat. My delegation would just like to note that many member states today, including my own, have praised and highlighted the role of UN Women in ensuring and promoting participation of women in the issues around women, peace, and security. In fact, that we consider this part of UN Women's core mandate. And in that regard, my delegation considers it extremely important that the voices of NGOs, and especially women representatives of NGOs, are heard at all stages of the process. So we saluted you for your work on many ongoing processes that are happening today, and we are also very interested in hearing this briefing on the status of that report. So we will certainly attend the second briefing, and we thank you for rescheduling. Thank you.
I thank the representative from the United States for our comments, and I'll give the floor to the representative from Israel. Yeah, closer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, let me take this opportunity to thank the Secretariat for all the hard work in compiling and putting together the reports and circulating them. We really appreciate that. In response to the issue stipulated by the Deputy Executive Director, we certainly supportive of option number 1, namely merging, consolidating the 2 reports, the report on the operational activities and the report on the progress made of the strategic plan. We think that this is the right thing to do. It would serve the purpose of greater harmonization in the UN system, in the development system. It is indeed in compliance with the recommendations of the QCPR, and it will also cut costs and enable some resources for UN Women to go for operational activities. So all in all, we strongly encourage UN Women really to go for option number 1. Thank you.
I thank Israel for his comments, and I give the floor to the representative of Japan. You have the floor.
Thank you once again, Madam Chair. Also, Japan will be very brief. Just we'd like to also support option number 1, which is, and also I thank the Secretariat to prepare the paper. And it's still better. It's quite obvious if you compare with 2 options, but it's also better to have even rather short session, but to have some opportunity to discuss rather than just passing through by email and decided. So I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Pan, for your comments. And I give the floor to the representative from Switzerland. Madam, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to thank the Deputy Executive Director for a presentation of the issue around the UN Women Harmonization of Reporting Cycle. And we also would support option 1, which permits to rationalize resources. And I think that it eliminates maybe some double reporting that was the case in the past. So I think we think that this is a good way to go, and we would fully support this. On the other point of rescheduling the briefing, I personally regret that, since I would have been very interested to hear the voices and views of various Syrian women. Even if with the rescheduling, having come here from the capital in 2 weeks, I will no longer be here, so I do regret that. But I understand the decision of the Secretary. Thank you.
Thanks, Switzerland, for the comments. And I give the floor to Netherlands.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to also intervene on the informal now rescheduled, also along the lines of my colleagues of UK, US, Switzerland. I would have liked to hear the voices of the women, Syrian women in this case, but also in general. I think it would be good to have women speaking for themselves here in the board, but I can also understand that countries concerned would like to have in advance consultation and not be surprised. But I think it's a good decision to reschedule this meeting. I look forward to it, and I also wanted to take the opportunity to thank you women for all your efforts and work in support of Syrian women. We have been closely cooperating with you and also with DPA, and we are really impressed by the quality of your staff in headquarters, but especially also in the region. And very glad with the outcome document, and we hope really it will help Syrian women to contribute effectively to the peace process. Thank you.
I thank the Netherlands for the comments, and I give the floor to Colombia. You have the floor.
Gracias, señora Presidente. Ante la pregunta que se nos ha hecho, mi país escoge también la opción 1. Colombia ha trabajado muy decididamente con el tema del QCPR y evidentemente estamos en favor de hacer un ahorro de recursos, pero sobre todo de la presentación de documento integral. Igualmente, los países que me antecedieron, esperamos el informe de Siria, el reporte sobre Siria próximamente. Muchas gracias.
I thank Colombia for the comments, and I give the floor to Norway. Madam, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chair. Very briefly, Norway is also strongly supportive of option 1 on harmonizing the reporting and following the recommendations of QCPR. Also, briefly on the Syrian women in civil society, I want to echo the comments of many colleagues. We We strongly feel that women from civil society should be heard and they need to have a strong voice. And we will make sure to attend the briefing when it takes place in the near future. And we would also like to commend the work of UN Women in supporting the Syrian women in the process. Thank you.
I thank Norway for the comments, and I give the floor to the Russian Federation. Madam, you have the floor.
Спасибо, госпожа Фури, за представленный краткий отчет и поставленный вопрос, а также за возможность обсудить поднятый вопрос на заседании исполсовета, потому что мы исходим и считаем, что все вопросы, касающиеся деятельности исполнительного совета, должны обсуждаться в открытую всеми государствами, чтобы состоялся обмен мнениями. Что касается поднятого самого вопроса, то мы считаем, что первая опция, предложенная госпожой Кури, представляется очень логичной, и она, конечно, будет способствовать экономии средств. Вместе с тем, все-таки хотелось бы обратить внимание на такой аспект, что просто обсуждение, которое у нас сейчас произойдет, его недостаточно. На наш взгляд, необходимо юридически закрепить, если будет принято такое решение всеми членами, о том, что вместо 2 докладов, как было ранее записано в мандате, скажем так, ООН женщин, мы представляли 1 доклад. Потому что если мы посмотрим, то изначально 2 доклада были заложены в основополагающей резолюции, которую создавала ООН женщины. После этого так скажем, в самой системе ООН произошли значительные изменения, в том числе и КАСОСом была принята резолюция 2015-5, в соответствии с которой все фонды и программы было предложено предоставлять консолидированный доклад. В связи с тем, что структура ООН женщин не является фондовой программой, а мы относимся очень трепетно к статусу ООН женщин, потому что это гибридная структура, мы считаем, что такие решения, если мы принимаем такое решение, оно должно быть оформлено юридически, то есть решением исполсовета. И тогда у вас будет, я имею в виду секретариата, будет полное юридическое основание представлять нам в будущем 1 доклад. Вот этот аспект, который хотели бы мы просто обратить внимание коллег. Спасибо.
I thank Russia for the comments, and I give the floor to Djibouti. And floor, Madam.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'm sorry I missed the presentation of the notes. Since I'm in and out, I had to go to the Security Council to deliver a statement also. So I just wanted to add my voice and express my delegation support for the option 1. I think the arguments presented are very pertinent and valid, particularly on the aspect of saving cost for UN women. And I think if we can save money for the operational activities that actually make the difference on the ground, my delegation is fully supportive of it, the option 1. Thank you.
Thank Djibouti for the statement, and I give the floor to the representative of the Solomon Islands.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to echo the support for having a consolidated report, but let me just seek clarification and probably make a request for consideration of the Secretary. In doing this consolidated report, I'm just mindful of not only what has been mentioned by Russia, but also would like to make a proposal of the possibility of also doing some informal briefing prior to the June meeting. I'm just mindful. This is something that we will be seeing in terms of a consolidated one for the first time, and it'll be good to really understand it prior to the June session. So I'm just wondering if there's the possibility of Secretariat organizing some sort of briefing on the report as when it is finalized. Thank you very much. Prior to June.
I thank the representative of Solomon Islands. Distinguished delegates, we have now gone past 6 p.m. and I would like to take this opportunity to sincerely thank the interpreters for being with us throughout this session. Their contribution has really enriched our discussion. But we still have a few items to finish, so I will now draw your attention to go on to the item 3 on other matters. Before going on to other matters, let me give the floor to the Secretary to respond to the questions and comments that have been raised.
Thank you very much. Distinguished delegates, you have very clearly indicated to us, and it is also, I think one could say that there is a consensus that we should go for option 1. And in that sense, in response to the query of the Russian Federation, what we would suggest is that this consensus be recorded in the report as a decision that was taken by the executive board, and that should suffice to meet the legal requirements. So this is one aspect. And on the engagement on the report and structure of the report, of course we are ready to have consultations with member states and members of the executive board. So I just wanted to clarify that. And also on the Syrian our engagement, UN Women's engagement, and the presentation on the support for Syrian women and their participation, and for the ruling out of our mandate and implementation of our mandate under 1325 and resolution, the Security Council Resolution 1325 and 2122. I do want to thank all for appreciating the efforts that we have made, and we will continue to make, to amplify, also bring together the voices, the entire spectrum of Syrian women's voices, to amplify them, to make them be heard by those that are engaged in peace negotiations and who are driving the peace negotiations. And that's what we try to do in Geneva, and which you have appreciated. And also, we are trying to make sure that exactly what you said in the context of the evaluation on 1325, to make sure that the women, peace and security agenda is fully implemented in the context of peacemaking and peace-building efforts in Syria and in regard to Syria. So this is something that we, of course, will very resolutely pursue. And as far as the briefing is concerned, we will indeed continue our efforts to keep you as member states and as the executive board briefed on what is being done. And of course, we are ready to engage and dialogue with the government of Syria to respond to the needs of women and girls in Syria.
I thank Madam Puri for the comments. I also like to thank the Secretariat also for rescheduling the meeting for the briefing, informal briefing on Syria. We have heard the concerns and issues raised by member states that we need everybody, all the countries, to be together so that all of us together can promote the agenda of promoting gender equality for all women and all countries. Let us now turn to the other matters.